What? There are little microbes that they injected in you today, dude. Yep. They're digital. Did you get vaccinated yet, Anthony? No. I don't know if I'm going to. Okay. Oh, I didn't know if you got if you're like some high level business, some business guy or something. Oh, we're ready? Hey, Canyon View family and beyond. We are continuing our road trip. We are on a road trip all the way to an empty tomb or to Easter. And so, what we're doing is we're preparing our hearts through different practices that get us ready spiritually, emotionally, even physically to really celebrate Easter, which is going to be just a big party. Now, today, a stop on our road trip is consecration. And you're probably wondering, what is that, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever had a moment where maybe your spouse is going to work and you're like, hey, have a good day and stay consecrated. Or maybe you have some friends coming over for dinner and you're like, hey, before you come in, would you please ceremonially bathe yourself and then we'll have dinner? Or it could get really weird and you stop some people from coming in your house and say, hold on for a moment. Let me go get the cow blood and I'm just going to sprinkle that on you just before dinner so that we're good to go and we're holy, right? Of course you wouldn't do that. Yet, these are the kind of things that were happening in the Old Testament to consecrate or set oneself apart in holiness. And I want to talk to you about that today. And I want to talk to you about what did they do, what do we do, and what does that mean for us moving into Easter? So a question you should ask yourself as you're watching this online, on your computer or your phone or whatever, is this: am I clean? Am I clean? Now, if you're watching online, you might just still be in your jammies right now and haven't showered for a couple days. Like, Tim Brown, I don't think showers once a week, I think. But that's a side note. Am I clean is a question that people were asking themselves before Christ all of the time, and it was always in the back of their mind. Because if you weren't clean or ceremonial clean or consecrated, it meant that you couldn't do things in life. It was a bad deal. So before we go too far, real quick, let's look at what consecration means as we look at the screen. Consecrate, or the word in Hebrew, kadash. Everybody, wherever you're at, say kadash. Good job. It means to set apart, to dedicate, or regard as holy. Or this word sanctified, which we're probably a little bit more used to, sanctification or sanctified. What's really interesting is to regard as holy. Here's why it's so important. God is holy. God is perfect. He is amazing. And by the way, he loves you like crazy. So he is holy, perfect, nothing, no sin, no dirtiness, no unclean thing in the presence or in who God is, right? Okay. And yet, here's us as humans who sin and do all sorts of things that are dumb, like I know I do. And if a person comes into the holiness of God, or to be near God in his perfect holiness, and we have sin or unclean, it doesn't work. Sometimes it led to death. So holy and holy can come together, but holy and not holy cannot come together. It's actually still that way, which I'll explain that in a moment. So what people had to do back in the day is they had to say, all right, I'm going to be in the presence of God, so I got to get holy. So how does one get holy? They had different ways of doing that, as we see in, oh my gosh, almost all of the books of the Old Testament in a way talk about it, especially Leviticus, where it talks about, here's the things you need to do to get holy. You need to wear the right clothes. You need to sprinkle blood on certain parts. In some rituals, you had to put blood on an ear, blood on your hand, and blood on one of your toes. You had to wash in a certain way, in a very specific order. So what was important that you know right now as we're talking is you had to do certain behaviors ritualistically to get yourself to be considered holy or consecrated. And then, and only then, would you be willing able to go and to be amongst the holiness. And then there's priests. You may have seen pictures like this throughout the Old Testament. Here's the blood they're going to sprinkle in the altar, and they do certain things. And so what's interesting, if you weren't holy, you were possibly considered defiled. Defiled is all sorts of things, from if you were around a dead body, or if you're bleeding in a certain way, or you have an exposed like sore, if you all sorts of things. There's lots of ways to get potentially defiled. Sexual immorality, certain types of lying. And if you were defiled, then you couldn't be with God and you couldn't be around people. You had to go outside of the camp. So it's important to know this. Defilement leads to something and consecration leads to something. Defilement leads to isolation from God and others, and it's just like shame. But consecration leads to connection with God and with others, which is acceptance. So in humanity, we have a little bit of a problem. See, we engage in things that would ritualistically defile us. But yet God is wooing us to be close to Him. So it actually creates a problem. Here's one way to think about it too. I got some new shoes. I don't know if you can see in the picture. Yep. And these shoes are white and clean and new. And, I don't know if you remember when you get new shoes. Like, I just remember when I was young, we'd always have a back-to-school party. My family didn't have a ton of money or anything, but we'd always have a back-to-school party, and we'd go have dinner and a movie the day before school typically, and I would get new shoes. And I remember walking in with my new shoes like these ones, and I would not want to get them scuffed, right? And so you're walking kind of carefully, and you're looking for who's got the shoes that might be dirty that step on my new shoes. For example, you might run across a shoe that looks like this, and it scuffs up your new shoe, and you're like, no! So what you do is you try to stay away from the things that scuff your shoes or make you have dirty shoes, you might say, and you walk through life a little bit like timid. And now this is the Old Testament, walking through life, kind of, I don't want to touch anything, I don't want to do anything that defiles me. And I'll just be honest, you might be watching this right now, and you might be thinking, well, that's how I'm walking through life. I'm afraid. I'm walking cautiously. I'm not full of joy. I'm not full of freedom. And so if we were to understand consecration in the next 5 minutes or so, even more, I think you would be able to walk even with more freedom starting today. Now, here's why this is important. When we have defilement, it separates us from God. And in the Old Testament, there are 3 things that led to that mostly. 1, sexual immorality. 2, the type of food that you eat. And 3 was idols. There's even this one story when Joshua took Jericho. They took it, and God said, hey, don't take anything for yourself. And one guy named Achan did, and he hid it, and that was a big deal. He went against what God asked them to do. He had idols of a sort in his tent, and it actually led to the destruction of him and his family. You see, idols are a big deal to God. Idols are anything that would take your focus off of Christ himself. Another way of saying that is we commit idolatry when we treasure anything more than we esteem Christ. Now, how does Christ get into the picture now as we're talking about idolatry and sanctification and these sort of things? It's pretty awesome. Because here's the good news. Back in the day before Christ, you had to do all the ritualistic cleansing all the day, every day, all the time, constantly. More blood, more washing, more this. Do all of these behaviors. But what if there was a moment where someone said to all of the priests and to all the people of the Old Testament, here's the deal. We'll do one final consecration, one, and then you're good for the rest of your life. What if that were to happen? And we see that that did happen. Let me read to you Matthew 15, 10 through 11 here to start. And he called the people to him and he said, hear and understand. It's not what goes into the mouth that defiles. So here's what's happening. The Pharisees are saying, hey, Jesus, your guys that follow you are eating and they're not washing their hands. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're not doing the ritualistic behaviors. And Jesus is kind of saying, hold on now, let's understand the truth about defilement. It's not about what goes into the mouth, but what comes out of the mouth. This defiles a person. Later, the disciples are like, what were you talking about, Jesus? And he explains it later in Matthew 15. Do you not see that whatever goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is expelled? You go, you eat it, you go, it's out, right? Now, but what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a person. For out of the heart comes now things like evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, and slander. These are what defile a person. But to eat with unwashed hands, that does not defile anyone. So here we go again. Jesus, he's so amazing. He flips the script on. He improves the reality of who God is. He said, you want to do all these behaviors to stay consecrated or clean, but let me tell you the good news. You don't have to do all those behaviors. But then he says, but it's actually harder to live a sanctified or consecrated life because it's all about your heart. So he's saying, don't worry about the behaviors, but actually it's worse news. Out of each of our hearts leads to thoughts that leads to defilement. For me in my life, I can't even... A whole journal couldn't even hold all of the things I've done and stupid mistakes I've done and thoughts to defile me and separate me, right, potentially from God. So Jesus is saying, don't worry about the behaviors now and the rituals, but yet because our hearts are wicked, now we have a problem. It's actually impossible to be considered consecrated. Now, that would really suck if that was the bad news or the end of the news, but it's not. Jesus is making it clear it's impossible to behave in a certain way to earn your way to God. Now, you got to check this out, you guys. In Hebrews 10:10, it says, and by that we will have been sanctified through, how are we sanctified now? Jesus in the book of Hebrews is writing here, and many think it's the Apostle Paul, the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once and for all. This is the concept in different parts of the Bible, especially Hebrews, that Christ now becomes our sanctification or is consecrated so that we are accepted and considered righteous. Let's look at a different one real quick. I think if we go to Hebrews 10:17, we have, then he adds, I will remember their sins and their lawless deeds no more. Let's even continue more. Breathe this in. John 17:16. That he's talking to the disciples, but also us. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world, Jesus says. Sanctify them in your truth. This is another word for consecration. Your word is truth. That's good. So from the word of God, it helps us in our sanctification process. As you sent me into the world, so I am sending them into the world, he says. And for their sake, this is it. This is where the penny drops. And for their sake, for the sake of the disciples, and later it's going to say for you watching right now, because it is impossible for you to do the rituals to earn yourself consecration or holiness to be with God. Jesus is saying, I am going to take care of that issue myself. This is mercy. This is love. It's not an issue of God's wrath. It's an issue of God's love. And so what he does, and for their sake, I consecrate myself that they also may be sanctified or consecrated in truth. Let's go back to that one again, back on the screen one more time. Because what I wanted to show you was, what does this mean? Well, through other contexts in the Bible, we know when Jesus says, I consecrate myself, what he is saying, I am going to the cross and I'm going to die for your defilement. All of the things that are in your heart and your mind that separate you from God, I'm actually going to go and consecrate or set myself apart, dedicate my body to you, and I'm going to die. And in that, if you believe that, and he rose again on the third day, you also then are sanctified by that truth. So I don't have to sprinkle blood. I don't got to take jacuzzis with holy water. I don't have to do all these different things and wear these certain clothes. I simply need to say, Jesus, you've done this for me. I see this. My worldview has changed. And I believe. And that's when you are considered consecrated. That's why Easter is such a big freaking deal. And so that we now then have holy God and holy you together. That's why the veil ripping when Jesus was on the cross in the temple is such a big deal. It separated the barrier between God and people. Now let's keep going now. I do not ask for these only, Jesus said. Not just the people I'm talking to right here, but also for those who will believe in me through their word. So from them to the next generation. And everyone that you're going to invite to Easter, who maybe has never heard the story for real in a way that maybe they can understand, Lord willing, they'll understand it, that this promise is for them. So think about right now, it's for you. It's so good. And then Jesus goes on like, this is my heart, that they may be one just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be in us. Do you catch this? Not only are we consecrated or considered holy, but now Jesus is saying, let's be like one. And that oneness, Father and Son and Holy Spirit and you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may know and believe that you have sent me. Okay, so us understanding consecration is an act of evangelism. I'm going to say that one more time. Us understanding and accepting consecration through the life and death of Jesus Christ, and us being one with God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, will show the world, it was down there, will show the world that Jesus actually came. You do not have to walk around afraid of getting your new shoes scuffed. But I tell you what, something else now happens in this illustration. Let me get my shoe. You see, what happens through Christ is not that scuff makes us unholy for some reason, but that you who are considered righteousness, you're considered holy, you are unscuffed, there is no defilement, your sin as far as the east is from the west. Now, when those other shoes come and you hit that shoe, you see, consecration is contagious. Holiness is not staying away from people who might not live a holy life. Holiness is assertively engaging in the life of people who might not be considered holy, who may be considered defiled, who may be considered on the fringe. A holy living lifestyle is a lifestyle engaging people who do not live, whatever that holy might mean to you or others, with love and introducing them to Jesus. We looked for the scuffed shoes and we want to knock into them. Holiness is not being separate from the world. Holiness is engaging the world. And it changes everything. You know, sometimes when I'm golfing with Pastor Kirk, he'll make a great shot. It's very rare, but he'll do that every now and then. And I'll be like, oh, wow, what a great shot or whatever. And every now and then he'll say, well, it must be because of my holy living. And, you know, he's joking, of course. But holy living leads to great outcomes for the glory of God and the blessings of others. Online, I want you now to experience something that I really appreciate as an example of someone who goes towards others that might be considered unclean. And it's a short video clip from a series that I've enjoyed called The Chosen. And I recommend you watch The Chosen. This is a short video. And watch how the people who are with Jesus respond to somebody who is unclean. And then watch as Jesus shows us what it looks like to move towards people in love. So check it out. What I love in that clip is one of the disciples pulled the knife on the person who had the leprosy and was like, Jesus, don't go close to him. Stay away from them. And all too often, this is American Christianity. Let's stay away from people. Let's just kind of huddle with people who think like we think. Let's have our kind of little club. Let's kind of have our little social group. And we'll worship God and we'll just stay nice and clean. That is not the church. Jesus shows us that we are to engage with people who are very, very much far from God, maybe, who might be considered untouchable. I remember being in Myanmar, and my daughter was with me, Bella, and we were in a village. Now, of course, you can't get into Myanmar, and this is through the church planning that Canyon View has done. And there were two little boys with leukemia. They were both like 8 and 10, maybe. And you could just tell that there was this like separation. Like people didn't know exactly what this was. And you could just tell that they looked a little lonely and isolated. I'm so proud of, this is when a dad brags on a daughter here. I'm so proud of Bella. I think she's maybe 16 at the time. She goes right up to those two little boys and just gives them a hug and prays for them and, you know, holds them. And of course, we know that nothing can be contagious through leukemia, but it was a situation where it was clear that those boys just loved getting touched and loved and cared for. And we prayed for them that they would be healed. And don't know how it turned out. I trust that God is with them and that they're doing well. We move towards scuffed shoes. That's what we do. So when we say Easter for everyone, we need to prove it. I need to prove it. I get lazy and I don't reach out like I should. Canyon View, Whether you're going to watch online and you can invite people to watch online with you, or whether you're going to come to one of our 4 gatherings, let's prove it. I want to ask you to consider stretching to reach and invite someone that is very different from you to hear the gospel. Someone you would never stop and talk to. In fact, I think what's going to happen over these next couple of weeks is you're going to see people with scuffed shoes. Like literally, God is so funny with this kind of stuff. He does these real life illustrations. Pay attention this week. And as you're walking around and you notice someone with scuffed shoes, that's God, I think, telling you, go say hi. Go introduce yourself. Take a risk. All right? Don't say, hey, I noticed your ugly shoes. That doesn't help. But just notice as a little kind of funny thing to move towards people that are different. Here's the next steps for that's one. Here's some other next steps for you guys. You got your daily devotions that are awesome that are online through Instagram and Facebook. Check those out. I'm going to ask you to do some homework. I want to ask you to read 6 chapters in the Bible. Read John 14, 15, 16. John 14, 15, 16. You're going to get the heart of Jesus. Then read Matthew 5, 6, 7. This is the Sermon on the Mount, and you're going to get what Jesus is asking us to do. In 6 chapters this week, you're going to get the heart of Jesus and really clearly some radical teaching about what we are then to do. And you'll get to know Jesus. The next thing I want you to do is pray, Jesus, reveal if there are idols in my life. Simple prayer. Pray, Jesus, reveal if there are idols in my life. Things that might be good that I've actually put as more of a priority or time or money than a relationship with Jesus. Let's do that right now. Let's just do it. We're going to take a moment, wherever you're at with your screen. God, thank you that we are considered righteous or consecrated in your eyes. There is no sin even in our life because of Jesus, what you did on the cross, your death and your resurrection. And so now out of that, we take on the identity as holy. And Lord, I pray, would you reveal anything in our life right now that may be an idol? That's taking time or money or attention. Is it news? Is it politics? Is it sports? Is it your own kids? Is it sex? Is it a drug? Is it coffee? Is it being a people pleaser? Lord, reveal right now. And Lord, thank you that this is an invitation to put you back as the first things first in our life. Amen. As we go into this closing worship song, just let this kind of process in your life that you are holy, you are consecrated, you are amazing and loved in the eyes of the Father through Jesus. And now in this next season up till Easter, is God asking you to lay anything down, get things out of your life that just aren't healthy? And we'll be with you on that journey. Love you guys. That was the Calvin special. It's still a little long, sorry for online. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Did I use every slide, Anthony?